let's officially get started. So, overcoming emotional scars, how EFT can transform your life. Allison, did you want to say hello or say hi or anything to make, officially start this thing?
Yes,
sorry.
You bet. So, no problem. So I'm Allison Sandblom, and I've probably interacted with some of you who are on the webinar now, but I'm the student advisor here at IMU, and my role is to assist the students with the enrollment process and also provide guidance and assistance to our students once they're already enrolled, just to ensure that everybody's having an awesome IMU learning experience. So I'm really excited to be on this call and talking with Deborah, and I'm sure everybody is aware that Deborah is our IMU president and founder of the university, so this is a real treat. And I know I'm excited. I'm also a holistic practitioner, so I'm always interested in learning about new modalities. So this is really exciting for me to hear more about EFT.
Well, I can tell you, as someone who does a lot of modalities myself, that you will love it. I'm a little confident because I've done so much of it myself. So let me just talk a little bit about EFT before we get started here and tell you a little bit about my story. I actually had been doing alternative healthcare for some time when one day we were doing an event at a local chiropractor's office to promote alternative healthcare, and this gentleman, Ken, walks in, who I'd never met before, and just starts raving about EFT. Now, this is 10, 11 years ago. Nobody had ever heard of EFT before. And he starts doing this strange tapping on his face, and I just think, what is this? You look ridiculous. And so he's like, let me show you. So I let him demonstrate it to me, and I couldn't at first wrap my mind around it because it looked, so uncommon. I'd never seen anything like that before, and yet the results were already notable. I mean, I couldn't ignore the fact that something had just changed. So I got home, and I couldn't stop thinking about it, and so I went online, and I started looking it up, and lo and behold, there was this information on it, and I went ahead and I purchased the training from Gary Craig, which back then was very significant training and a lot of work. Oh, my goodness. For months I sat there watching the videos and doing the training, and then finally I had the chutzpah to just do it with one of my clients, and it just amazed me, the results that we got. Very quickly, I started integrating it into my practice and using it all the time, and before long, it actually became my main protocol. Now, the thing about EFT that I love is that anybody can do it, and that it's so easy and so profoundly effective that you really can't deny it. And the thing that I think is most notable about EFT is that it works on emotions, which is something that nothing else has ever done. I mean, think about it. If you show up, if something happens in your life, you go through a terrible breakup or a divorce, or you lose someone, or someone, just even as a child, someone says something very mean to you, there's no way to heal it. The best that we as a society have come up with is time heals all wounds. Well, that's just complete crap, and we all know it, because what happens is those wounds sit in our energy system and they fester. And so 10, 20, 30, 50 years later, they're still sitting there unresolved. And the problem with that is that they have such authority in our lives. So I know that for me, the first 20 years of my life were defined, really the first, if I'm honest, because I didn't get this training until I was in my 30s, the first 30 years of my life were defined by teasing as a child. And I know I am not at all unique in that way. Everybody who's been through the school system has experienced some sort of experience in their childhood, whether it's from parents or it's from children or it's whatever, that someone has said something to them that sticks in their energy system and then has all this authority. So you start to live your life around it, and until now, there hasn't been any way to correct it. So these emotional scars sit there, and they harden, and they define you. And unless there's a way to get around them, you really just have to learn how to live with them. And you can see these people from a distance, these people who have been emotionally defined by these moments in their history that have never been addressed. And it doesn't matter if you're 5 years old or 50 years old, these moments affect you. And worse than that, they affect you on all levels because they affect the way you think about yourself. They affect the way you think about your skills in the world and how you're going to interact in your relationships and how they're going to interact in your life at large. Let me just tell you a little bit about EFT in case somebody hasn't heard about it before, because for us it's kind of old hat, but for other people it's new stuff. And it's been catching on like wildfire, and I think a lot of that has to do with the founder of EFT, which is a gentleman by the name of Gary Craig. And EFT, which actually stands for the Emotional Freedom Techniques, was founded in the 1990s by a gentleman named Gary Craig, who was really a personal performance coach. So he goes and he takes a training called thought field therapy and comes back and starts experimenting with it, makes some tweaks and ends up with the Emotional Freedom Techniques, which is called EFT. Now, what EFT is, I think the easiest definition is to say that it's an emotional form of acupuncture. Acupressure. And what it does is it uses a series of taps or touches on various acupressure points on the body to release blockages in the energy system. And when you release those blockages, you allow the body to heal. Now, this is based on a very simple premise that a lot of people don't know, which is that your body works on energy. Your body runs on energy. So the difference between a body that's alive and a body that's dead is one has energy running through it and one does not. When the energy stops, it's kind of like switching off a light switch. If you have the light on, you have the light, you have the energy running through the body, it's alive. If you flip the switch off and you shut the source of energy through the body dies. So your body runs on electricity. It's actually measurable. People, you go to a doctor and they'll check it on an EKG or an EEG, the electrocardiogram, electroencephalogram. They're measuring electrical output of your body. And even as a kid, many people did those experiments where, you would plug a light bulb in to a potato and the energy from the potato would run the light bulb. Well, you can do the same thing with your body. Your body has enough energy to actually run electrical outlets, and it's all been measured. So that energy runs through your body in predictable patterns, much like the energy in your walls. Very rarely does a contractor come in and run the electricity in zigzag fashion. It's running in predictable patterns through your walls. So you go over and you plug into an outlet where, this predictable place is kind of like an acupressure point on your body. So the next thing you need to know is that your emotions are energy in motion. And it's energy in motion through this electrical system. And when it's running through easily, you feel good, you're happy. When there is a disruption in the body's energy system, you will experience what Gary Craig refers to as the zzz in the energy system. And that zzz is a disruption that will manifest as a negative emotion or as another symptom. And those disruptions in your energy system are what cause you difficulties in your life. They cause you difficulties in your physical health, your mental health, your emotional health, and in your spiritual health. So here's what happens, really. You experience some sort of a trauma. That trauma can come in the form of something someone says to you. It can be some kind of life-threatening experience. It can be really watching something blow up on TV, which seems like it's innocuous, but really can be very traumatizing, especially to young children. And so that trauma then has causes physiological reactions in your body. And there's a whole, in the class, we actually go through the physiological experience. We don't really have time to do it here. But then what happens is this energy gets stuck in the system, and it starts to replay itself over and over and over again, like a stuck needle in a record. And no matter how hard you think about it, or how hard how much therapy you go to, it seems like it makes no difference, because you end up with that groove back in the record over and over again, and it just keeps coming up, and you push it aside, and you push it aside. Well, it's because you have a blockage in your energy system. When you clear that blockage, you will be amazed at how quickly and efficiently that issue just goes away. Now, it doesn't mean you aren't going to remember it. You just aren't going to remember it with the same charge. So I know, like, when I work with people who have grief, they've lost a loved one, and that's, that can take years for people to get over if they don't have help. And I know, for instance, I had these two people, both lost a loved one in the same month. And one woman lost her husband in a tragic lawnmower accident, actually. She had asked him to mow the lawn. They had family coming for an event, and they were actually clients of mine prior to this. And she asked him to mow the lawn. He goes out at dusk to mow the lawn, flips the tractor over on himself, kills himself. She finds him later that night. Very traumatic experience. In the same month, another woman who did not come to me for 2 years later, was actually referred to me by the first woman. Her husband, actually it was her fiancé, so it was actually worse, because wedding and everything was planned, and that didn't happen, and all their money, everything was a mess. He died, he went off on a motorcycle trip with some friends to ride for cancer or something, and flipped his motorcycle and died, and actually had limbs removed. Also not a nice story. Now, the first woman knew me, and they had actually worked with me before, and she came in immediately. I mean, the day she found out, she called me. We got to work, and within a few short months, she and her son were back living their lives relatively normally. And when she thought about him, she thought about how much she loved him and how happy she was that he was in her life. She was able to experience him, when he would come to her in her dreams, and feel happy about it. The other woman was completely derailed. She could not move out of his family's house. She could not work. She could not function. And her life stopped when he died. There was no movement for her at all. So it was some long time afterwards. I can't give you specifics because this was some time ago. Maybe a year and a half went by, or 2 years, before she ran into the first client, who actually, ran into her somewhere and said, "Listen, go see this woman." And so she came to see me, and within 3 sessions was back to living her life again. Now, something like that is so traumatic, but there's all these little details, the belief that if you love someone, you have to grieve, and these social mores that say you're supposed to grieve for someone, for a very long time, and that the more you love them, the more you grieve. But what EFT does is it doesn't take away the memory of that person. It doesn't take away the love that you had for that person. What it does instead is it clears the trauma out of the energy system, so that when you think back on them, you remember them, and you can remember them with love and with happiness. That's just one example of something that EFT can work on. EFT can be used for so many different things. When you understand that all negative emotion is a disruption in the body's energy system, and that by clearing the disruption in the body's energy system, you can literally transform your life because you're eliminating beliefs about yourself that are not true. You're eliminating things that other people have told you that just aren't true. You're digging into finding out what's this reason over here why I can't allow myself to do this, or to, to fall in love, or to make money, or to lose weight, or whatever it is. What are these beliefs that are holding you back? EFT goes in there, and through setting intention and tapping on the energy system, goes in and really gets to the core issue, and then releases it. It doesn't go in and pull it out. It just releases the disruption in the body's energy system so that now the energy can flow through. Because this works on everything, you can use it for anything. Now, the other thing you should know is that there's no negative side effects. There's none. I mean, other than you could maybe tap on yourself too hard and get black and blue. And also, if you're working with somebody who's, in a highly exacerbated state, and a lot of you who are psychologists or counselors or social workers are going to run into those kinds of people. You really need to know what you're doing to work with them, because you can re-traumatize, and you don't want to do that. So in the course, of course, we teach you techniques that are going to stop you from re-traumatizing, so that you know how to move through the more serious issues. But by and large, you can use this technique to heal yourself, to heal your own life, which I love. So the course, actually, if you decide to take the course, it can be taken by both professionals and by laymen. So if you want to take this class because you want to heal you, that will happen. Now, I can't guarantee you're going to heal everything that ever happened in your whole history, but you have the technique and the professional technique within that you can then take out into your life and continue to work on yourself every day. I can tell you that I tap constantly, and I don't just tap to heal my history anymore, because I really feel like my history is healed. I just don't have, trauma that I can look back on and say this now defines me. But I do use it in my present. So today, while we're trying to put this webinar together and Murphy's Law is in full force and technology is literally kicking my ass, I find myself tapping my way through it so that I can maintain the calm and not get so traumatized by this that I no longer want to do webinars, because I think it's such an important way of communicating with people that I just have to get through what it takes to learn this. So I use EFT in my life all the time. So anyway, you can use this technique as a person who wants to heal themselves, and it doesn't matter if you're talking about emotional issues. Again, if you have physical pain, my God, EFT, there are people out there who can tell you stories about how people have healed themselves of multiple sclerosis using EFT. This technique the things that it has been known to do are amazing. So it also takes care of little things like headaches and physical pains and, so on and so forth. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to correct every physical ailment, and that if you know EFT, you're never going to die or anything like that. It just means that you now have a technique that you can use in your own life to keep yourself healthy. So I see these people out there now who have addictions that are really just anxieties, and there are people that have these chronic angers and the bipolar disorders and the depressions and the anxieties, and I just want to scream and tell them it's fixable, it's correctable, and it's easy, it's doable, it's easy, and there are ways to do this. There never has been before, which is what's so great about EFT. There are ways to heal it. If you go through a major PTSD event, a trauma, like the people that went through the September 11th thing, where some of those people turned white overnight from the stress of it, the Katrina experience, the all sorts of weather phenomenon or war, those people come out of that damaged, and without real help, their whole life is defined by it. But here is a simple, easy tapping technique that they can use to heal themselves. Now, the other thing that's cool is professionals can use this. So not only can you use this in your own life, but professionals use it all the time. And in the last class, we had a professional, and, you know, at the end of the course, those of you who take it, you'll see her actually talking about this. She's like, I'm afraid to use this in my own, you know, my own practice because I don't know what people will think. And so I said, well, let's just talk about your results. With the clients that you're working with that you're not using EFT, what kind of results are you getting? How many have gotten better? And you would think that if you asked a psychologist or a counselor or a social worker, how many of your people gotten better, the answer is going to be, you know, 50, 60, 70%, maybe higher. But the answer was 0. Nobody actually got better. They made progress. Well, you know, everybody will tell you this kind of stuff takes years to get better, but it's not like that. It's only like that because they don't have a technique that actually addresses the core issue, which is the blockages in your energy system. So I said to her, well, how many of your clients have gotten better with EFT? And she's like, you know, 80, 90%. I don't remember what she said, but it was in that range. And I thought, then what is your holdup? You know, you're worried about what other people are going to think? Tap on it. Because you went into the healing profession because you wanted to help people get better. You didn't want to just take their money by having them line up week after week after week to spend another $150 to talk to you for an hour. Instead, bring them in the door and help them get better. And there will always be a line of people who want your help if you're really helping people. You'll make just as much money. And I love that about EFT. I love that you can take somebody who's really not well, and not only can you help them, but you give them a technique that's so easy to learn that they can use in their own life and go home. So if they get into the middle of a trauma, if they get into another moment where someone's hurting their feelings or something has happened in their life, and we all have it, they have a way to get through it now. So it doesn't have to live in their energy system for another 5 or 10 or 15 or 50 years. And the other thing that's cool about this is it does not matter how old it is. The energy system does not know space and time. It doesn't matter if the trauma happened yesterday or it happened 50 years ago, or one could even presume happened in a past life. The trauma has the same authority and can be cleared with the same efficiency. So what are the kind of things EFT can work on besides anxiety and depression and PTSD and physical ailments? It can also help you with things like really difficult issues like rape issues. Rape's one of my favorite things to work on, which seems crazy because people get so stuck, not in just perceptions about rape, but the experience itself. And, you know, rape, incest, it's another one that, you know, people get stuck in their whole life is defined by it. But with EFT, they sit across from you and you help them to shift their paradigm and you clear it out of their energy system and you do it from a place of love, from the objective, all-loving observer, from the fifth dimensional experience. And you help them to clear it and they walk out and then it's just over. It doesn't mean they forget it. It just means it no longer has any authority in their life and they can move on with their life in such a new way. I think it's also powerful in helping people to create their lives. So you look at these people who are blocked and nothing seems to ever move them through. And it turns out that it was a belief system or it was something that someone said. And you go in there with EFT, you find the core issue, which is something we do a lot of in EFT. We learn how to do setup statements. We learn what are the core issues. And then once we find it, we address it, and then it layers off. That's another thing. It's like onions. So you'll get to one piece of the puzzle, and then you'll go to another piece of the puzzle, and it just has this way of just popping up one after the other to reveal themselves. And you tap out layer after layer after layer until the core is just laying right in front of you. You take it out. You see the body sigh. You hear the body relax, and you watch the body transformed right in front of you. You know, sometimes people ask me what I do for a living, and, you know, this is when I was doing EFT and other protocols full-time. Nowadays, I really focus most of my attention on the school, which is part of why I just love this online platform, so I can be teaching it at the same time that I'm, you know, keeping the school growing. But people used to ask me what I do for a living, and I would say I watch miracles. You know, I'm not a miracle worker. I'm a miracle watcher, and I could just watch every day people come in full of hurt and pain and emotional scars that you thought would never go away. And an hour later, they walk out transformed. And sometimes it's not as obvious. That's true. Most of the time, it's really obvious. But they say that the efficacy of EFT is about 80%, that 80% of the time you're going to get a result. I don't think that's true. I think it's 100% of the time. Sometimes, maybe 80 or 90% of the time, especially for those who are really good at this, when you get to know all the different things that I teach in the class, 80, 90% of the time you're going to see a change. 100% of the time you're getting a change. I just come to believe that every time you tap, something has changed. It's just not always obvious. Allison, are we getting any questions yet?
Yeah, we have. We have a couple. So the first one from Sandy is, how long does a typical EFT session take?
Well, if you're doing it as a professional, most people set it up as an hour-long session. You can do half-hour sessions. I do both. Now, half-hour sessions I don't really recommend for a first time. You know, if you get a client, actually my first sessions usually last about an hour and a half because it takes that long to do your intake and so forth, but generally about an hour. Later, after you've been working with the client for more time, about half an hour sometimes can be enough. If you're working on yourself, a session can take a minute, just a minute to run a round of tapping if you're in the middle of stress. But a professional session, usually most people go for about an hour. As far as what people charge, that really varies too. Generally, I charge about $100 an hour for a session. I do it over Skype or in person. And for a long time here in West Virginia, the market would not bear more than $50 an hour. So if I was doing it here in my hometown as a non-licensed professional, because EFT is a non-licensed protocol, so anybody can come in, take the training, get good at what they're doing, and then go out and help people. You don't have to go through board certifications. You don't have to go through all the legal rigmarole. You can just start helping people, open your shop. And as a certified level 2 EFT practitioner, if you take this training, you're getting level 1 and level 2 practitioner certification. You can set up shop and help people. Did that make sense, Allison? Help me here.
Yeah, that was good. That was a great answer. So basically they can do a series of tapping on themselves in just a few minutes, and then if they wanted to incorporate it into their healing practice or professional practice, they would just set it up like a normal hour-long session. Yeah.
So we find that actually, there's whole brackets of EFT that are all about speed. So if you're a chiropractor, if you're a medical doctor, if you are one of these social workers that has foster kids and you only have them for 10 minutes, you can still get results with EFT in 10 minutes or 15 minutes. You don't have to have an hour. But if you're setting up a professional session with somebody and you're doing the by the hour process, there's also people who get paid by results with EFT, which is where you really make money. So for instance, if you're doing pay by results, you're not checking time. So you might work with a professional athlete. So let's say you live, in a town where there's a feeder team. Is that what they're called? Teams that are working their way up to being professionals. Like when I lived in D.C., there was a team there called the Bowie Bay Sox that was a feeder team for the Orioles. So if you go to someone like that and you say, listen, you are this many batting points away from getting picked up by the majors. If I can get you to that place where you get picked up by the majors because you're really stuck and it doesn't look like you're going to make it, but if by working with me you get to the majors, I get 1% of your contract. That's another way of doing it where people make tons and tons of money. Or let's say they're working with phobias. If you go into the business world and you work with somebody who has a fear of flying or who has a fear of public speaking and you use EFT to help them get over it, you ask them up front, what's it worth to you? If you can get past this fear of flying or this fear of public speaking, what's it worth in your career? Well, for somebody who could be a vice president and they're stuck in management because they're afraid to fly to get to all the conferences or do whatever they need to do, it might be worth a lot of money. So they might say, hey, it's worth $5,000. Well, now your session is not an hour long. Your session is until you get your results. And maybe that's 10 sessions, but that's, another way of doing it.
Great.
Any more questions?
Awesome. Yeah, we do. We have a few others. Here's a question. Jenna asks, can you use EFT for weight loss?
Yes, weight loss is to some degree anxiety. So you use food as an addiction in much the same way as someone would use cigarettes or, alcohol. So it's about learning how to get in there and take out, okay, I have the craving for this issue. In fact, we do a whole section in the class on cravings, and that works for all sorts of addictions. So, yeah, it's quite well known for that. It's not my specialty by any means, although I find addictions quite easy to get past in general, especially smoking. If somebody's really ready to get past smoking and they're willing to sit with you, you have to, you have to really deal with the underlying anxiety, but smoking itself pretty easy to get taken care of. And I think that because, weight issues have been present in my own life for such a long time, I feel a little bit like a hypocrite when I work with people on it, so I don't have great success with it. Now, a lot of people will take, say, Dick Sutphen's class on hypnosis, and then they'll combine hypnosis and EFT, which is really successful. You take somebody into trance. While they're in trance, you ask them what's the underlying core issue. You tap out the acupressure points, clear it in their energy system, and then, you get to the core issue in 5 minutes that way. So I would like to see somebody do that for weight issues, actually. I think that would be a great capstone project for, for somebody who's actually working on a master's degree in holistic health. And you could do that combination in all sorts of different ways.
That's a great idea.
Thanks. So do we have any other questions?
We do, yeah. So Andrea, I'm guessing that she might do energy work, but she's asking, do people need to know where the energy blocks are in order to be able to do EFT?
No, it's a great question. No, the thing about EFT is it's sort of a blanket approach. Now, see, when Gary Craig got this from thought field therapy, which was a protocol that was created by Rod Callahan based on his learnings from Touch for Health, which is actually the class that John McGuire teaches here, which is the energy kinesiology course. If any of you are in that course or you're in the holistic healing program, you're going to take the energy kinesiology course. So the energy kinesiology course, which came from George Coudard, led to, which was Touch for Health, which led to thought field therapy, which led to EFT. So what thought field therapy did was it used all these very complicated algorithms where somebody needed to figure out where to tap. But with EFT, what Gary Craig did was he said, I don't want to spend all this time figuring out where to tap. It's really expensive because Roger Callahan was charging $100,000 for the training and then $10,000 for every client to find out what the algorithms were. So that's how successful it was. People were paying it, but Gary Craig's like, yeah, I don't think so. This is stupid. Let's just tap on the points. So he put together a tapping process, a simple algorithm that people use over and over and over and over again, and you don't have to think about where to tap. You just tap the same process or some variation that you want to tap, but it's, you don't have to know. No. The answer is no. You don't have to know where to tap. I mean, you know the basic algorithm, but then that's it.
That's awesome. So I think people are pretty excited to learn the techniques. Is that something that's visual that's covered in the video in the class online? Yeah. Yeah. I will tell everybody that I'm sorry that I'm not showing you how to do the actual tapping. We had planned on doing that when we were in the other platform, the other technology platform. We had a video there ready to show you, but again, like I said, Murphy's Law has kept us from being able to show it to you. But if you... Now, is it possible if they're interested, they could email me, and could we send them that short video?
Yeah, absolutely. We can send anybody the link. If you just send Allison an email or send me an email. I'm at president at intermetu, intermetu.com. And Allison, you want to give them yours?
Yeah, I'm at Allison at ALLISON@intermetu.com.
Yeah.
And if you send me an email and you want to see a demonstration of how to do the tapping, there's a wonderful video that Deb has created that I'll email you a link to.
Yeah, and I also, anybody who's really interested in this, go online and type in Gary Craig video. He put together this amazing video before he retired, maybe, I don't know, 2009 he retired, I think, 2009, 2010, that really shows you all of the empirical evidence, how they took this into hospitals and they would do blood tests before tapping and blood tests after tapping and realized how much more effective it was than taking pills. And, they really showed you some amazing testimonials of people who have gotten better from it. And it's nice to see it. In my life, I've seen so many hundreds of people get better that I don't really need to see the testimonials. But for some of you who have never seen what it can do, I think that can be really helpful to see the scientific research behind it and to hear people, who are getting better. And, So anyway, email us and we'll get you that link to the video. You can also just go on and Google me or YouTube me. You can YouTube me. Is that the term? YouTube emotional freedom technique and Deborah Lindsay, and I'm sure it will come up. So there's the easy way.
And so do you need you talked about this before as far as licensing or?
No licensing. No, and you don't even really need health insurance or, like practitioner's insurance or something because nobody ever gets hurt. And what's fascinating is if you want to get insurance for it, you can, but it's like, I've heard people tell me that they get it for $12 a year, because nobody gets hurt. So, I can't say don't go get it because as a practitioner, it's always sound advice to have, that kind of protection because there are people out there looking to blame you for their health if they're just not advanced enough to understand that only they are responsible for their own health. Okay, what else do people want to know?
Well, I did get somebody that is in a challenging relationship with a significant other and would like to know how EFT can help with that.
Okay. Here's what I find about relationships. And again, this is the kind of thing that we would deal with really quite specifically in the class because you do a lot of tapping in the class. We start out by doing sort of the personal peace procedure where you're working on yourself, and then we pair up into teams. So you're working with other students, and then you go off and you're working with practitioners. So there's a lot of hands-on work. It's very much an experiential class, not a lecture class, although there's tons of lecture. So when we get into the relationship piece of it, when you're talking about relationships, it's always about you. And that's what people don't want to hear. They want to think that, their partner is doing something wrong, blah, blah, blah. Well, maybe their partner is doing something wrong. And sometimes, you can't get past what they're doing wrong. But what I can tell you is you can never heal a relationship if you're not willing to address your own stuff because everything is a reflection of you. It's like, you've never actually seen yourself. You might see your hands or your legs, but you've never seen yourself. You've never looked into your own eyes. And even when you look into a mirror, you see a reflection, or you look at a photograph, you see a still frame, but you never see you. It never happens. And that's why relationships are so important in our life, is because we get to see ourselves through someone else's eyes. They become a reflection to us of who we are. And that's why, when we're in a relationship, we look to somebody who is willing to love us even when we might not be willing to love ourselves, or someone who's willing to see the goodness in us and overlook the flaws. But as time goes on in any relationship, we sometimes get caught in the flaws because that's the problem. That's us. That's the piece of us that's unhealed. Otherwise, we can just let someone else be who they are and love them who they are without needing to change them. So if you're in a challenging relationship, the only thing you can change is yourself. You might get to, okay, so even though she or he drives me crazy when, right? You get down to the specifics. Even though she drives me crazy when she slurps her juice, And then you tap on it. It drives me crazy when she slurps her juice, drives me crazy when she slurps her juice, drives me crazy when she slurps her juice. Well, her slurping the juice isn't the problem. It's your reaction to slurping the juice that's the problem. So the power lies in healing yourself. Because when you're in love with somebody, you're really in love, and you're in that high, in that early stages, you never see what's wrong with them. It doesn't exist. All you see is their perfection. And later, as you start to get deeper into the relationship, you relax more, this reflection of yourself comes in, and you say, okay, so I hate the way they slurped the juice, which really it's the part of you who feels imperfect. So then we start drilling down into the core issues to find out what is the thing about you that is distressed by their slurping. And maybe it brings up a memory, or maybe it's a fear of being judged, or maybe it's, there's a dozen different things, and we'd have to look at a specific person under a specific case to find it out. But once you find it out and you tap it out, then all of a sudden the person slurping their juice becomes funny or adorable again. It's, it's no longer this agitation, but an interesting characteristic. We've all seen these couples who are, somehow or other they've got this enlightened love. Although I think every relationship has difficulties. I don't think anybody has fairy tales. And if you take my ordination training, you know that I have a whole section in there on soulmates. Now, your soulmate is often the person that teaches you the most, and they do so by driving you absolutely insane. But we all know those people that have these really easy relationships, and not the kind where they're both asleep. Is not what I'm referring to. The kind of they're both fully awake, fully engaged in the relationship, and fully accepting and loving of each other. And I think that comes from working on yourself, not from correcting the other. I don't know if that answered the question. It was a really long answer.
No, that was great. I love it.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, let me see if we have any other. If anybody else has, we have probably a couple minutes. So if anybody else has a question, go ahead and submit on the front page of the event. There's a little box that says submit your question. Okay, yeah. Here's a couple more. This class is web-based. How can you do experiential?
Okay.
Question mark?
Yeah, well, it's a really good question. First of all, the first aspect of the experiential piece is that in the first part of the EFT class, we're doing what's called the personal peace procedure, where you're working on yourself. So nothing is more experiential than sitting in your own home tapping on yourself. So that's level one. Level two is many EFT practitioners now work online, because you don't have to tap on the other person. They tap on themselves and you guide them. In fact, that's part of what the beauty of EFT is, so you don't have to have a license to touch. I do recommend that you have the ordination, which is part of the reason that we offer the ordination training, so that you have that level of, legal protection. Not a requirement, but certainly a recommendation. And then the third level is working on people in your own life or in your own community. So once you get into the level 2 techniques and you're learning the more advanced stuff, you're actually going out and, working on people in your own community. Now, for those who are already professionals, if you're, a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a counselor, this is easy because you just start working on your clients. But otherwise, you might work with your family, which actually I think is the hardest thing ever, or your friends, or, you see somebody at Pizza Hut who really needs help, and you go, hey, I've done that before. And you'd be surprised how many people, after they roll their eyes at you for talking about tapping on their face to get better, will let you work on them.
Okay, here's a couple more questions. Do you have any suggestions on approaching a skeptical family member, such as a teenager or spouse, with EFT who may have experienced trauma?
Always tough. Like I said, it's hardest to work on your family. And I think that that's really tough for moms and dads alike to accept that their child isn't willing to accept help from them. And that's often because of shame issues. They're not willing to let because you're in that role of disciplinarian, they're afraid, and also because they care about your opinion so much, they're afraid to let you know these things that might have happened to them. and they just can't reveal themselves to you that much. To some honestly, sometimes you can't get past it. Now, other times you can do, we talk about what's called building a bridge in the class, but what you can do is what's called surrogate tapping or imagine tapping, and we talk about the ethics on this and address all that in the course too, so people can make their own decisions about what they feel comfortable with. But you can actually tap on yourself for them, and it's all based on the construct that we're all swimming in the same energy and we're all ultimately one. So I'm you, you're me, and or I am you. You are me. So you can guess that that's where the name of the school came from. I am you. And you can surrogate tap for them. So you can sit in your room at night and just tap. And otherwise, it's just, good social skills. You just have to find a way to get them to trust you with their other stuff. Now, the other thing that's relevant here is that in the advanced training, you learn a bunch of techniques, because people think EFT is just, tapping your face, and it is. But it's more. It's so much more. You learn these advanced techniques. You learn the tearless trauma technique. You learn the movie technique. You learn the choices technique. You learn touch and breathe. You learn a series of different advanced techniques that are going to teach you how to address somebody who just really doesn't want to talk about it. So you can say to them something like, listen, I'll give you $20. So, if you just sit here and let me tap with you for 15 minutes. I'm kidding, of course, but not really, because that's, with teenagers, that's what talks, isn't it? But you find a way to get them to relax, and you just say, listen, I don't ever have to know your stuff, and I don't even really want to know your stuff. This is your personal life, but as your parent or as someone who loves you, I want you to feel better, so please let me help you. And I will do it without ever going into your stuff. I don't have to know it. So, by providing that separation, perhaps that will be a way in. Every person is different, so there's no straight-up answer for this one. I'm sorry, I don't have any better answers than that.
Good. Well, I thought it was good. Very helpful. I know I've had that issue, with my boyfriend where, he never listens to anything that I say, but if I refer him or maybe lay down a book or a brochure or a business card or, he'll go to somebody else or he'll read about it. He won't actually come to me
right.
for the session, pretty rarely. So.
Well, unfortunately, it has to do with balance in relationships. I mean, there's this tedious balance that exists inside all interpersonal relationships, where one person can't be the healer and the other person be the healee, or you really disturb that delicate balance often. So your relationship has to be at a very high level, mature state before you can move back and forth between healer or whatever. Instead, what happens is you get the healer and the wounded child, and those relationships tend to be really difficult too, because if you've got the healer and the wounded child, then the healer's always in the role of healer, and the wounded child's always in the role of being wounded. And if the wounded child all of a sudden is not the wounded child, now they're the healed child, the healer is no longer necessary, and the relationship dissolves.
Right.
Sorry, that was a little tangent. But the other thing...
I love that.
So with you, Allison, the thing that I think is cool is your little girl. How cool would it be to raise a child who never has any emotional issues from the start?
Right.
Gary Craig has this whole thing where he talks about, how parents will sit down with their children at night and read a book. And you have your family conversations over the dinner table. Well, what if, as a parent, you have a young child and you integrate this into the life very early while you still are the healer and the authority, and they're willing to let you, So at bedtime, you sit down and you then have a conversation about how was your day, and you train as a part of the evening practice. You heal the day. So you tap on anything that happened that day that hurt their feelings, or anything that made them sad or scared. or traumatized. And they learn how to trust you with their emotions very early, and they also learn how to trust you with their healing, and they also learn how to heal themselves. And they're doing it every day, so there's never any buildup. You know, it's like the waxy buildup. It never happens. So your child grows up with this tremendous self-confidence and self-awareness and never having anything to heal when they get older. You know, so many people spend their adulthood healing their childhood because we never taught anybody how to deal with their emotions as children. But you have this amazing opportunity to sit down with Ava at night before you go to sleep and say, how was your day, honey? Let's tap. And
yeah, that's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and you need to do it before they're about 10 or, you know, good luck.
Yeah,
Then you're, then you're trying to heal the traumatized teenager. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Deborah, this is I absolutely love this. You clearly know a lot, and I can just feel your enthusiasm. I can tell you really love EFT.
I do. And I think it's because I just had all this emotional baggage. You know, I spent my life up until, you know, I learned EFT, I spent my life healing my history. And it all came down to 3 girls who said mean things to me when I was 10, you know? So I love that about it.
Yes, yeah. Just use that high school energy.
Yeah.
I think somebody could open a practice healing high school wounds. You know?
I do too.
Yeah.
You can open whole practices healing high school kids. You can open whole practices for addictions, whole practices for phobias. You can have whole practices for physical ailments, whole practices for relationships, whole practices for people trying to transform their lives by getting past blockages to success. I mean, whole practices for weight loss. There's just stop smoking. You could start a whole practice full of stop smoking. There's so much opportunity because it's such a successful protocol. So the couple $100 that you're going to invest in the class is a pittance compared to what you're going to get out of it. You save so much money because there's an expense to carrying crap around with you. So even if you're only taking this class for healing your own life, you know, you don't have to go to another counselor who's charging you $100, $150 an hour. You don't have to go to another doctor because your physical health is a reflection of your emotional health. You know, you can't get physically ill without it having first an emotional component, which we talk about how that works in the class. So the number of doctors that you don't have to go to, the number of pills that you don't have to go to, the number of surgeries that you don't have to go to, the number of days that you don't wake up with anxiety, you know, those are very expensive characteristics not to heal. It's so much cheaper to just spend a couple $100 and the 12 weeks that the course takes to heal the stuff and to have this protocol that keeps you from getting sicker and older and tireder, you know?
Yeah.
And then if you look at it from the other perspective, which is if I charge $100 a session, I only need to do 4 sessions in my whole life to pay for it.
Right. Yeah, it pays for itself really quickly.
Right. Yeah. It's the cheapest.
Well, I know I'm definitely interested in taking it. I'm excited about it. So I was going to announce one more exciting thing because I thought this was really important and exciting. Anybody who joins the class from this webinar is going to receive a free 1-hour EFT session with Deborah. And you also get to take the course again at any time at no extra cost to you. So the course will be available to you in a long-term situation.
Right. A lot of people like to take it over and over just because they feel like they don't absorb it all the first time because there's so much information. And it is a 12-week course. You do have to expect to spend 3 to 4 hours a week on the class. I mean, it's a rigorous training. It's not one of these weekend seminars where you're learning how to tap and then we send you out into the world and call you a practitioner. You are really coming out of it a professional. You're working with me. If you have questions, you call me. You email me. I'm interacting with you all the time. And like Allison said, you do get 1 full hour with me. You can use it for an EFT session. You can use it for asking questions about the training. And also, guys, if you just want to get a session with me, if you don't want the course and you just want to sign up for sessions are $100, just email me or call me and we'll set something up.
And we want to thank everybody for joining us tonight and sticking with us through the change. And we appreciate your perseverance through our technological challenges.
Right, really.
And we wish everybody a great night, and thank you, Deborah.
Thank you, Allison. And I hope that you join me in the class, or that at the very least you walk away having learned something that'll make your life better. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.